So I look around the cell and I see he has a brand new bottle of baby oil. So I tell him, get away from the door. And the whole time I'm taking my shirt off and I'm taking my undershirt off and I'm stripping my pants off. I am buck naked standing in this man's cell, slathering myself with baby oil because I know I'm going to make it very hard for him to get a hold of me. I am not leaving that cell without, maybe he's going to lump me up, but I'm going to be a greased pig by the time I get to the door. And he is laughing just like you are, telling me, hey, Altman, you can be as slick as you want to be, but I am going to thump you down for taking all my stuff.
Hello, Wayne, again. How are you today?
I am fantastic, and it's always good to talk to you.
Well, today we're going to talk about your work as a correctional officer for lifers, right?
So I was in the military for eight and a half years. I was in the Army. And when I got out, I decided I was going to go back to school. And in Huntsville, Texas, that's where I lived, there were basically two options of jobs that you could do while going to college. And one of them is work at a McDonald's or a fast food restaurant, which I did that, but I didn't want to do it. I didn't like doing it. The other job in Huntsville was working for the prison system. The TDC in Texas, I think at the time there were like 15 different units that you could work. And I started working for the prison in industry where they made all the products, mattresses, chairs, furniture, you name it. The Texas prison system had a factory that produced it, including the food. This is back in 93, 94, 95, that era. In order for me to be promoted, I needed to work corrections. And the person that had hired me to begin with in industry, it was a great job. His name was Dub Howes, and absolutely loved that man. He was a man's man. And he came to me one day and he said, hey, I got good news and I got bad news for you. And I said, well, I always want the good news first. Give me the good news first. Let me see what I do about the bad news. And Dub basically said, hey, look, I've got a job for you, but you cannot have it unless you have correctional experience. And I knew what that meant. It meant that, and I was on the prisons all the time. I would go to prisons every day, but to work on one in corrections, in, being a guard, that was a totally different experience to me. So immediately within the next few days, I went to Gatesville, and that's where the guard school, the class that you had to take. I spent, I think, 8 weeks to work as a correctional officer. You take a class, school, stayed there, lived there, and then I began a correctional 4 years in corrections.
So you worked for 4 years. Now, what do you like the most about working as a correctional officer?
So correctional officer wasn't the part of it, the part of the job that I loved. The part of the job I loved working in prison industry. I loved the job that I had we made these books for Texas. They give a book. Sorry, I had this turned off. They had a book that they presented with all of the towns of Texas. Then we made maps and we made stickers for windows, for hospitals and for universities. Okay. Working with inmates, not necessarily guarding them, but working with inmates was it was a lot of fun. But when I became a correctional officer, that's when it became very serious, or took another level of seriousness. That wasn't as much fun.
Mm-hmm. What was not fun about that?
Well, look, it's a prison, and especially in where we were in Texas. Ellis 1 unit was a unit where older inmates were. You had fewer fights, but those fights you did have tended to be more violent. I worked for a number of years at the women's prison. That's where I started, was working at a women's prison. And at least in Texas, Women are different. Women don't fight. They try to kill one another. And that is a whole, my baptism in a prison was women's prison. And man, they are very, in my experience, extraordinarily brutal to one another. And that part of it was not as, was not as much fun. But it was a definite eye opener watching how women operate in a prison.
So Huntsville, Texas, that's a high security, maximum security prison, right?
There are 18 different units in Huntsville and the surrounding area. Okay. So some of them are maximum security, some of them are medium security, and there is even a couple that are administrative and low security, kind of trustee. I worked both at Ellis. There was a wing which was trustee type individual, very low security. People came and went all the time, all the way to death row. Death row was at Ellis when I was there. I worked death row for 2 of those years. And that was the most maximum security that you got on a prison was Ellis 1. Matter of fact, one of the reasons that they moved Ellis or death row from Ellis is because of an escape. And we can talk about that if you want, but inmates will always find a way to better their situation or try to escape. And sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not.
So what are the most memorable experiences you remember from working at that row unit?
So for me, a couple of different things. Number one, I would also start this question off this way. I had a porter that was from San Antonio. He owned a tow truck company. And this guy, every time he worked for me on the wing, and every time I wasn't right there with him, he was cleaning something, but he would also take breaks and he would crochet with beautiful blankets, baby blankets. And we're talking he would do 1 or 2 of these a day. His hands had gotten to the point where he could crochet that quickly. And I never asked him, hey, what's with the baby blanket? Could you do more mopping and less knitting, Anyway, one day, a group of nuns showed up on the wing, and they took this inmate. We all went down to the gym, and he was given an award from the Catholic Church. He had crocheted over 2,000 of these baby blankets and had donated them to orphanages, to orphan children, which opened my eyes. I was like, whoa, that's number one, 2,000 is a lot of blankets to be, 2,000 of anything is a lot. It's a big number. So that got me very curious about this person who was convicted of killing 2 people. What made him, why that switch? That is a huge dichotomy. That is a very big, split. So after doing some digging, I find out that, look, he walked in on his wife and her lover. She had cleaned out his entire fortune. He was a tow truck operator, sold all of his trucks while he was visiting in Mexico his dying mother. He came home to her about to leave him for his biggest business rival. Now, pardon me, I put myself in his shoes. And I found myself, when I did that, in the exact same spot as now my friend here. I found it very difficult for me to think, well, I would have had a different reaction, because frankly, my friend, I would not have had a different reaction than he did. And so it colored my perception of where I was and who I was with. That I'll put it that way.
Because I was inside too, but mine was like, the lowest security ever, in the camp. But still, I got the flavor a little bit when I was, they didn't give me any bond because they said flight risk. Actually, they were right. I was a flight risk. I had a passport. I could have fly, So I stayed in jail with everybody, like a regular jail with everybody, with all the killers or whatever, waiting for my trial, whatever. I didn't have no trial. I had to sign a plea deal because it was crazy. It's a different story. I should have just do 2 months in jail for what I did. And I've seen so many cases over there. I've seen a lot of pedophiles. I don't know, they were guilty or not. I've seen a lot of them. Then I've seen a lot of murderers, but the violent ones, they were in a different unit, and they were all we were orange. I was wearing orange, but the violent ones, they were green or blue. I don't remember, different color, because they were so crazy. And you can see everybody because there's glasses. You see them. They were fighting all the time. But we got some of those crazy ones too. They got into our unit. They fight. Then they changed them to a different unit. There was a lot of racism too.
Oh, where we were, it went both ways, but that was more, I think that slowly is, in prison, you need protection. You cannot house that many men together and not have personalities rub off on one another or rub people the wrong way. Women especially, I hate to keep going back on that. Sounds like I'm being hard on women, but they're on another level. Truly, they are on another level when it comes to incarceration. And, you said something, and I totally agree with, that we don't lock up pedophiles and other violent offenders nearly long enough. And those people that committed nonviolent offenses and drug offenses have way disproportionate even taxes, things that you could pay a fine, you could do a work release for and never go to prison for. And why we don't do that, I will never understand. Yeah. There's a number of things about the United States judicial system that unfairness is built into the system. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. In Texas, you have large counties and you have populous counties. Harris County, Tarrant County, Montgomery County, Walker County. These are populous counties in Texas. And there's a lot of people and a lot of money. If you do the exact same crime in Harris County that you do in Mejia or Bexar County, which is a far less populous county, far less money to, prosecute their inmates. Okay. So for example, you and I, we go on a spree. I do it in Harris County. You do it in Bexar County. Same crime, same exact scenario. I will be executed within 5 years of committing that crime. You will sit on death row. Both of us will get the same sentence, but you will sit on death row for the remainder of your life. That's where you will die. And to me, that is the epitome of unfair. That has nothing to do with the crime that we committed and everything to do with where that crime was committed. And that we need to do something about that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, you knew as a correctional officer, you had access to the files of these inmates. You knew their crimes.
In Texas, they took and I could see the issue. Yes, to answer your question, yes. But it was much better for you as a human being not to know many, many times, not to know what the individual you are dealing with was convicted of. And I'll give you an example. So I had to transport an inmate that was very, very ill. We loaded him up in as a matter of fact, he was comatose, basically. Very old gentleman in his late 80s. Loaded him into an ambulance, drove him 800 miles to hospital. Because inmates don't use local hospitals in Texas. They all go to a certain hospital in Galveston. Get there, remove his shackles, whatnot. He passed away very shortly after we arrived. But in order to do that, they have what is called a travel card, and the travel card tells you what this person did. And at 19 years old, this, I told you he's in his 80s. At 19 years old, this individual was arrested for marijuana. And I'm not talking about a warehouse full of marijuana either. It would shock people to know how little marijuana he was in possession of when he entered Texas Department of Correction. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't commit other crimes once he got there, but I hardly think that he committed enough crimes to spend the majority, the vast bulk of his life behind bars in Texas. Now, he did do that in the 60s, late 60s. So, you know, our attitude about marijuana, especially in Texas, our attitude about marijuana is completely different now than it was then. So it does color it way more horrendous. But the point is, what the amount he had with him would have netted him about a $160 fine in California, where I am right now, if that. And this man spent his entire life in prison based on that one conviction.
Thanks to Nancy Reagan war on drugs, right?
I think that, yes, and she wasn't the only one with that. Look, we're all deathly afraid of drugs. We have an epidemic. I mean, look, right now, a new Nancy Reagan is in the wings because of all the fentanyl. I mean, they've made a boogeyman of fentanyl, and and maybe it's 100% true. Listen, there are places within a very short drive of where I live that you see. I never thought zombies were real. You know, you go to the movies and you see a zombie movie. I never thought that was real. I always got a kick out of that. I don't anymore. They're real. They are 100% real. You go to certain places in California where the drugs are bad, and man, it's Walking Dead. So yes, that's what started the 80s, say no to drugs. But remember, this guy was convicted in the 60s, and he was convicted. That came from Reefer Madness. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but that, in the 20s, 30s, in the 40s and 50s, we've always had this weird, thing about drugs and our kids getting on drugs. Drugs have been around for a long, long time.
Now, this prison was, you worked in different departments and different units. So have you seen many people go outside, go home?
Yeah. So with Ellis was one of those units that had maximum security for death row and ADSEG, which was administrative segregation. It had general pop or general population. That's, your experience. And then trustee, A wing, H wing. These were wings where they would leave to go work. They would leave the prison to go work.
Yeah.
The warden's butler worked in our A wing. And the way Ellis did this, unless you were on death row, and I mean a correctional officer, unless a correctional officer was on death row, because those death row guards went through special training, and that's where you stayed. But prior to me working death row, I worked general population. So I worked the entire rest of the prison, laundry, kitchen, ADSEG. It's an interesting story how I ended up on death row, if you want to hear it. So I went from Gatesville, went from the women's prison after about a year or so, and went to Ellis general population. That's where everybody starts, general population. Like I said, you need special training to go over to death row, and I had not had that training. Well, I go to general population, and I've been there now about a year and a half. In Texas, they do what is called an in and out. They roll the doors open, and inmates can go in their cell. They can leave their cell. They can go into the day room. They can go outside into the rec yard every 30 minutes. Okay, So we were doing an in and out. I had a kid, very pasty, maybe 100-pound kid working with me on the job training, OJT. I have these keys, and I tell my picket boss, roll the doors, do an in and out. But when you do that, I want you to pin open a specific door, because I'm going to go in that room and I'm going to search it for contraband. I made a habit. I knew that this individual was a player. He always had stuff in his cell, and that's part of my job, was to go in and beat this guy. He thought that he was awesome. All right. So I watched him. We did an in and out. I watched him go outside. I looked at the picket boss. I heard her pin the door open. I go in the cell, start doing a search, and immediately hit solid gold. I mean, this guy had fried chicken. He had a tattoo machine. He was running numbers. Everything that you cannot do, this guy was into. So when I started finding this, I go back out, tell the picket boss, okay, I'm going to go back in the cell. This time, I want you to shut the door and pin it closed. Do not allow the doors to open while I'm in that room, because I don't want him coming in on me. All right. She says, great. And I've worked with this officer before. She was awesome. I give the keys to the kid, and I say to him, whatever you do, do not let that inmate, and pointed him out. He was on the weight bench, very large black fella. I mean, this dude was huge. I am playing with fire. I understand I'm playing with fire, but it's part of my job. Okay. 30 minutes rolls around. I have a box full of this guy's going to do another 15 years in prison if I get out of that cell. I mean, it is crazy how much he was doing wrong. But I am pinned in this cell. I'm fine. Okay. We do an in and out. The inmates out on the yard. Hey, Altman is running your cell. He comes running, tries to get in. Well, this kid lets him in. And he goes right up to the second floor where I was. And I turn around and see him pulling the door. And at first, the door didn't move. But then it started rolling back. Now, listen, I understand that all of the people that have ever been in prison that are listening to this story are laughing their head off right now. Because I'm about to get what's coming to me for rolling that cell. I get it. I understand that. However, you're not dealing with just some schmo. Okay? So I look around the cell and I see he has a brand new bottle of baby oil. So I tell him, get away from the door. And the whole time I'm taking my shirt off. And I'm taking my undershirt off, and I'm stripping my pants off. I am buck naked, standing in this man's cell, slathering myself with baby oil, because I know I'm going to make it very hard for him to get a hold of me. I am not leaving that cell without, maybe he's going to lump me up, but I'm going to be a greased pig by the time I get to the door. And he is laughing just like you are, telling me, hey, Altman, you can be as slick as you want to be, but I am going to thump you down for taking all my stuff. Well, my picket boss, smart as she was, yelled down and got a sergeant. And a whole crew of my fellow correctional officers came down there and saw me standing in this cell, glistening with baby oil, naked as a jaybird, okay, and just ready to fight. And the eyes, the mouths that were open, everyone thought it was hysterical. And I had female officers too, okay? I mean, look, man, I was going to be here tomorrow, okay? So I put my clothes, and my sergeant says, hey, Altman, put your clothes back on. Put my clothes back on. They cuff him. But here's what got me to death row. Here's why they moved me to death row right now. he thought it was very humorous that I was in his cell up until the point where I brought that box of stuff out of there, and he realized he was going to be doing more time. And he charged me, and when he did, my Sergeant Hill yelled at me, and I spun around and caught him right hand, right on the face. He was handcuffed, but he was charging. He lost his balance and fell into the floor and the bars on the side and broke his jaw. Really hurt himself. And when immediately started swelling up. And when everyone said, what happened to Alan? Altman hit him. And they look and see the damage. I hit him on this side. All of the damage was on this side. So they thought I crushed this guy's face. Oh my God, man. It was hysterical. Unfortunately for him, he did get more time, and, he had his jaw wired shut.
Poor. How much more time he got?
I think only around 5 years, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think that they took it very easy because of all the damage. They didn't want any, they didn't want any, him to come back on them. Look, listen, he did everything the exact wrong way of doing things. A lot of people go to prison and they do their time, but even more people go in and the time does them.
But if he would attack you like he was going to, how much more time was going to be added to his sentence for attacking a correctional officer?
A lot.
10 more years.
And
10 more years.
By the way, we lost a correctional officer very shortly before that. Very shortly before that, we had lost a correctional officer on our unit, and it was a lover's, thing. She fell in love with the inmates that she was guarding. That happens pretty frequently, actually, but most people don't know that. You're dealing with human beings here, even human beings that may have lost their mind or whatever. You are still dealing with human beings. And we had a case where the female correctional officer fell in love with one of the inmates, and he was having her bring in things, and she had a family on the outside, Sergei. This was not, this was a big deal. And he ended up murdering her in the prison because she was not going to be, she had come to her senses somehow, evidently. I don't know all of the details, but he ended up killing her and killing himself, if my memory serves. But look, you can put a human being in any situation. They are still nothing more and nothing less than a human being. They're going to do the same things. We do what humans do.
Okay, so did you make any friends with any of those death row inmates? Did you have any deep conversations?
I have people, yes, and I can say that now. I have people that I miss terribly. I mentioned one of them, as a matter of fact. I was telling you that he made all these. It made me realize that, and matter of fact, it opened my eyes to several other people there that were put in situations that I cannot honestly say I would not have reacted the way that they did. By the way, interesting note, a couple years ago, I live in California now, and a couple years ago, I was asked to serve on a double murder jury. And on this murder jury, we listened to the evidence, and I was the foreman of the jury, which surprised no one around me, but I was the foreman of the jury. We go in to deliberate, and I was slapped in the face with the reality of our jury system. I don't doubt that it's the best in the world. I'm fine with that. Okay. But I will tell you that if you ever commit a crime and your peers are the ones that are judging your guilt or innocence, good luck to you. And I think that that would be the case. I don't care where you could go to the Eastern Bloc, you could go to Asia, you could go to China, you could go anywhere on the planet you want. And I just think that that is a very, very bad place to be, is your fellow human beings judging your guilt or innocence. Just crazy to me, the reaction of those 11 other people in that room, their willingness to ignore rules, the court system's willingness to ignore their ignoring rules. I ended up getting kicked off that jury. I ended up getting sent home. And the jury, in my case, was hung. I was not going to vote. In our system, you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You must be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And with the evidence the state put in front of me, I had many reasonable doubts that this individual did what the state alleged they did. Horrible crime. Did I think this guy was innocent? Probably not. Okay? If I was a betting man, but that's not what my instructions were. My instructions were, if you have a reasonable doubt, if we haven't proven our case to you, and in no way did the state of California prove to me that this guy definitively did what they said he was going, or what he did. And so I refused to convict him. And maybe that has a lot to do with my experience as a correctional officer.
I remember when I was inside, how poignant this desire for freedom is. This is why I called my show About Freedom Show. I was out of prison in 2016, a long time ago, so about 7 years ago or so, whatever, 8 years almost. I'd done 2 years, 22 months. But I remember I was in that cell in CCA, because I came back later. I was in Youngstown on probation. And I came back and I was looking at a window and I said, my gosh. Because from that window, there's like, those windows there like this, tall and narrow. And you look through that window, I was looking outside, I seen those trees, but I didn't know what's behind those trees. I had no idea. The desire for freedom is so, so powerful when you're locked up. Thankfully, I had not very long sentence, but when they locked me up, how they scare you, prosecutors for nothing. I mean, they were saying, okay, you're looking at 10, 15 years. Tell me what you've done. I didn't do anything. I just didn't pay my taxes. I'm going to pay them. Okay. But they were trying to give me a lot of stuff, So this is why nobody wants to go to trial, because excuse my French, you're going to get fucked if you go to trial. 97% are won in special feds. I was in federal. So that's why everybody signs a plea deal. This is the same thing. They scared me, and then they gave me a plea deal. Okay, if you sign it, you do this, you get only 20 months, 22 months or something. I say, okay, I sign anything, just let me go. 22 months, no big deal. At that time, I already done 10 months. So I was already, I had only 1 year left to do. So I said, okay, let me sign anything. But the desire for freedom, most people from outside you see are correctional officers. You don't see much. I mean, unless you go to a medical, you see some woman over there. They're correctional officers too. So I was looking at a window and thinking, my gosh, look at those officers. They got out of their car. They're free. And they're going to go to work whatever 8 hours. Then they're going to back in the car. They're going to go home. They're going to hug their kids, their wife. They can go to any restaurant. They can go to McDonald's. They can go to anywhere. It was such a big dream for me. I was like going to another planet. And I was not like a nobody. I was a film director before that. I was an award-winning film director, But this desire for freedom is so acute. It's crazy, it just opens your mind. I realized a lot of stuff when I was inside. I'm telling you, Wayne, it was really, I would say it was a good experience, even though I spent 2 years, plus I've done 2 years of probation, which was not easy. It's just sitting in Ohio for 2 years. So this is what I want to ask you about the freedom.
Look, I think that's the biggest problem. Two things. Number one, the look, we knew when we had someone new come in to watch very, very carefully to make sure that they got off on the right foot as far as doing their time rather than their time doing them. Because you are going to go through and you know what? That was something I did care about a great deal. I did not want to see someone just get absolutely steamrolled, A, by the prison system, and B, I did not look at myself as part of that punitive, that punishment. My job was to make sure that you were safe while you had to pay your debt. That's it. That was my job. My job was to make sure you woke up in the same place every day, that you got food to eat, and you had no new holes in you. Okay. And people, I would watch people get very depressed. You're 100% correct. We really desire freedom, and it's different than if you had been stranded or marooned on an island, and you could see another island off in the distance, and maybe that was the mainland.
Yeah, you are still in control, however terrible that might be. I know there's a lot of stories of people stranded on an island in the ocean, but still, you still have some control because, I don't know, you can build a boat, you can build something, and you can try to swim or whatever, you know. Here, you have no choice. That's it. I'd say you're locked up, real locked up. To me, for example, the hardest part was the noise. I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
I like to be by myself. I live right now in a village here. There's nobody around, thank God, and it's so quiet. And I want to hear my tinnitus. That's all. We've been talking about the tinnitus last time.
Right.
But so this noise was driving me nuts over there. I had always my earplugs, and I had this headphones, and this is how I lived all the time because otherwise you can't. Because I was in dormitory. This is a camp, and everybody's in the same room, 80 people or something, not 100. And
everyone knows they're going home eventually.
Yeah.
You know, all they're trying to do is make it another week so they can go home.
Yeah.
I get it.
It was not dangerous because nobody they were like in 2, 3, 5 years maximum, everybody going home because it's a camp.
Yeah.
So they were staying away. There were some fights, but people were staying away from trouble. So basically almost everybody was trying to be friendly and stuff like that. But the noise was killing me. So that's it.
Well, there are no soft surfaces in a prison. So there's nothing to deaden that sound. It's all iron and brick.
Exactly.
And you're right. You are 100% correct. And, you know, one of the things I was going to say, one of the things that I noticed my fellow correctional officers doing was they would deny. They felt like they had to be part of the punishment. It was a punitive. They went to work to punish people. I know that when inmates would come to me and ask for something simple like toilet paper or, to go to a commissary or whatever, there was never a desire on my part to withhold. This is something the state has provided to you. Here's a roll of toilet paper. Go do what you got to do, or whatever that was. I also, though, didn't get played by inmates. I instinctually knew when someone was coming to me trying to run a story. And, I think I had very good respect with the inmates, at least. A lot of times, not necessarily the correctional officers, but definitely the inmates knew, hey, here's a guy, we're going to protect him because he will live and let live. He's not going to, don't go to him asking to smuggle something in here. But at the same time, tell you a story. In Texas, very hot, very hot. And when I was in the A wing, where all the trustees, these guys all had jobs. They were all just like you, trying to get out, trying to do the right thing, do what they're supposed to do. It would be particularly hot in these like warehouses. And I had the ability to call the kitchen and have them bring me a igloo cooler full of ice for my drinks. And I would keep that locked up. It was, in water and whatnot. Well, depending on how everybody was acting in that wing, I may or may not have left the room where that ice was open, and maybe somebody came in and was able to get some of that ice and use it for their own purposes. And these inmates knew those type of officers. Now, something as simple as ice, it's going to go away very quickly. And by the way, that key will lock that ice up super quick if you guys start acting a fool in here. I have a job to do. I'm going to get through that 8 hours. I'm going to get through that 7 hours, whatever it was. I'm going to get through this part. You're still going to be safe. I'm still going to go home to my wife, to my kids, to my family. I'm not the one that's, locked up. And we'll do it cooler, or we'll do it where you're roasting your, buns off, whichever way you want to do it. But everybody's going to be, I'm going to do my job.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. You work as a correctional officer. This is kind of unusual job because you are here a free person. And every day you see people they're never going to see the light of the day. Never.
Yeah.
So that's kind of unusual work. So what was your bigger realization that you realized for yourself in these couple of years that you work on a death row?
So, look, I think it built in me empathy that I did not possess before. I think it gave me an empathy that really I had never even considered, because you're right. There were people that I knew and cared for that the state was determined they were going to kill, and did. I witnessed 2 executions while I was on death row. Neither one of those people was I very close to, thank God, but there were people that I had grown to respect, if nothing else. And by the way, I had a lot of respect, a different relationship with a particular inmate that while he was on death row had taken 2 lives. So he had his own justification for that. And I also knew that, again, antagonizing someone who is that good at and that capable of taking someone's life is probably a smarter way of dealing with someone than trying to be punitive, trying to exert your control over that individual. That's not going to work out very well for you because, again, he could snap at any time. And this particular individual outweighed me by at least 100 pounds. It was like working with a gorilla or a lion or a bear. You better have a certain amount of respect if you're dealing with that person, because they're, number one, don't think that because they're on death row, they're not smart. There are some of the very, very, very smart people that are sitting on death row.
And they have nothing to lose.
And nothing whatsoever to know. As a matter of fact, some of them feel that it will hasten their time. They don't want to be on death row, and they know they're not ever getting off of death row. And so, or prison, period. There's a lot of guys in prison that are not on death row. They're in general population, but they know that they'll never leave prison. Mm-hmm. And so they've nothing to lose, and it builds them up. If they were to hurt someone or to take somebody's life.
Yeah, because everybody's going to be afraid of them. They're going to know that you don't mess with this person. He's crazy. Yep. I know that in prison, the crazier you are, the safer you are, because everybody got to think that you are crazy.
That's another thing, too, that I saw a lot of was mental illness. And I totally understand why. You have people that, that you've taken their freedom away. It's cold or it's hot. There's never an in between. You're either freezing or you're burning up hot. I had a guy that every single day would hand me a postcard that he had written to Bill Clinton, President of the United States. Now, forget that Bill Clinton was not the President of the United States during this period of time, but it would ramble on, and it was fascinating to read this person's explanation or thinking, I'm going to get off death row because Bill Clinton is going to spring me from this position that I'm find myself in. And it was, the other guards were, it made me a lot more cautious with this individual, but it seemed to make the other prison guards there, my other correctional officer friends, they just thought it was hysterical that this guy was writing Bill Clinton and, explaining himself to him every day. And they never got mailed. Bill Clinton never got one of these, I assure you, never got one of these postcards that the guy was making and sending out.
Okay, my friend, let me ask you a question I ask everybody on my podcast. What's your definition of freedom?
Definition of freedom. I think the ability to, wherever you are, you may be incarcerated. There are free people that are incarcerated today. Okay. I don't think freedom itself is a physical thing. It is a mental perspective. Freedom is being able to do as you determine to be the correct thing. Okay. Being able to say what it is on your mind, being able to take in what other people, you have freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of location, being able to go wherever you want. There are many different types of freedom, but to me, freedom is being able to speak your mind and express yourself in a manner that no one controls.
Yeah. So like you said right now, that there are people in prison who are much more free than many people who are on the outside, because the freedom is not the external freedom, it's more like the internal freedom.
I know more people incarcerated that live within a 5-mile radius of me right now in California. They go to a job, they go to school, I know more people that are incarcerated in their own thoughts and their own preconceived notions than I ever knew when I worked for the TDC.
Exactly, because I know people who are on the outside and they're young and they have everything they can achieve and everything, but they're depressed and they think that life is bad, and so it's a state of mind, my friend.
I want to say something to you real quick. It just occurred to me recently this year. I met an individual, Bruce Bryan. You need to talk with him. After this conversation, I'm going to put the two of you together. Okay. And you tell me, you're going to contact me and tell me if he doesn't impress you the way that he's impressed me. Okay. One of my new, very, very good friends, someone that I am super impressed with, spent over 20 years, about 29 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. And it's verifiable now. He's free. He's out on his own. And the grace and the way that he did that still to this day blows my mind, because I would be angry. Someone took that amount of time off of my life, for my life. The prosecutors that did this to me, you got to hear his story, and then you tell me whether you'd have the same attitude as my friend Bruce, because I'm telling you right now, I know for a fact I would not. I'd be on a rampage right now. And he has handled that with such grace and such, elegance about himself that I'm very inspired by him. I'm very, very inspired by that guy.
Well, that's why you didn't do the 29 years, so you can be in his shoes. He came to a realization because he probably was locked up for life. He probably was released because of his innocence, right? Or because he finished doing so he said, okay, I have no way out, and I'm going to be happy or I'm going to be miserable all this time I have to do. So he decided to be happy. He had a choice. So we all have a choice. All right, my friend, we're going to conclude here. Thank you very much for your time. And I can...
No problem. I always enjoy talking with you. I definitely appreciate it. Seriously.
Thank you for watching About Freedom Show. I really appreciate you. Click on one of the videos below and don't forget to subscribe.